Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for tuning back in. Guys, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you that are watching the videos on a regular basis. The channel is really growing well, and it makes doing these videos so much more rewarding when I get the positive feedback back from you guys, who are applying some of these tips and tricks and just different things we discuss on the channel, and you're being successful with it, catching more fish. So if you are using some of these different tips that we're providing on the channel, give us some feedback. Let us know what's working, what's not working, what videos you enjoyed. It's just great. It's really rewarding for me to be doing this and to have the feedback that I'm getting from you guys. So thank you very much with respect to that. Today I want to talk about falling water. I had a subscriber reach out the other day and say, hey, a great topic I'd like to hear you talk about is falling water. And I think it's a really good, timely topic for me to discuss because, again, I just got back from my last MLF Pro Circuit event was on Lake Eufaula. And the week before we got there, Alabama got a ton of rain. The lake came up several feet, and Lake Eufaula is not really a lake that fluctuates a ton. It's kind of got like a 2 or 3 foot range that it stays in most of the year. But it's not one of these lakes that fluctuates like 12, 15 feet, 40 feet. It really stays at a relatively stable range, in my opinion. A few feet is not a big range. Well, when we got there for the event, the water had come up several feet, like 2.5 feet. And on a lake like Eufaula, you've got so much shoreline cover that 2.5 feet is just allows those fish to spread out dramatically. Hankster. So in this case, what happened though is once practice started, we were kind of at like the peak. The water then dropped about a half foot every day into the tournament. So we were back down from being at like 2.5 feet above full pool to about full pool. Well, throughout the event, that was one of the topics that a lot of anglers were talking about. Oh, I'm so worried about the falling water. I'm so worried about the falling water, especially if they were fishing a shallow bite. If you were out in the brush piles, it's not as concerning because those are out in 8, 12, 15 foot of water anyways, and those fish aren't going to go anywhere. The shallow water fish, though, everyone was concerned about. And in my head, I was like, you know what? I'm not thinking this is such a bad thing because there's so much cover in the water that when that water drops, those fish are going to gravitate to the areas that have more water under them. There were a lot of areas that, with 2.5 feet of additional water, you could spend all day flipping around and fishing. Everything looked fishy. Well, when the tournament started, there were areas that, only had that much water on them. And you could, very easily rule out those areas that they were not going to be super productive places to fish. So for me, and I know I didn't do great in the tournament. I mean, I finished right in the middle of the pack, but the majority of my bites, pretty much all of my bites, came from stretches of shoreline cover that had some decent water on them. And really, in my opinion, is those fish were scattered around, and then when the water dropped, they moved to those few areas that had better water depth on them, and it actually made them more accessible for me. So just because you've got falling water, it doesn't necessarily mean that, fishing shoreline cover or fishing bank related strategies are going to be bad. They actually can get better because of it. On the rivers up here in the North Country, one of the things I love is when you've got falling water, where the shoreline related cover isn't as good, any isolated cover that you have off the bank, like lay down trees, those tips of those trees will be so good. Those fish will just pull out to like the first cover that they can find that has enough water depth on it that they feel comfortable around. So if you just realize that what the falling water is doing is it's moving the fish to very isolated pieces of structure and cover, you can really make it, you can fish it to your advantage, and you can have some great fishing because of it when other people are complaining that well, the falling water and the low water is making the shallow bite tougher. Well, it's just, you just got to adapt to it and realize that the fish are going to pull out to a little bit deeper pieces of cover, or the remaining pieces of cover that are still in the water. If you're on, say, a highland reservoir lake, like a Table Rock, or, you know, something that's just got much more vertical banks, I really don't feel like falling water or rising water have that much of an impact on the fish unless it's a drastic change. You know, if you're talking feet at a time, feet in a day, up or down, that's going to move the fish around. But if the water's slowly dropping, you know, 3 inches a day, I don't feel like that's going to move the fish much, because they're on such a vertical bank anyways that they're just not going to be, they're not going to feel like they're that forced to move. You have more of an impact when you're on a body of water that fluctuates quickly but has less vertical depth. So a lake like Eufaula, which is a flat lowland reservoir type lake, it doesn't have a ton of deep water. I mean, you could be a quarter mile offshore and you're in 3 feet of water. So if you take 2 feet of water out, all of a sudden you've got a super shallow flat, and those fish are going to move further because of it. You know, from a bait perspective, I don't personally change my baits just based on falling water. What I will do is I'll work my baits further out though. You know, again, my experience with lakes up north where you do have fluctuating water levels, and on some of these rivers, a lot of times, and I have found this to be the same case down south on lakes, when you do have falling cover, and this doesn't make a ton of sense to me, like I don't fully understand it, but when you get the water that drops, if you've got, say, a laydown tree that's a good tree in normal water conditions, the water will fall to a point where those fish don't feel comfortable in that tree, and they will pull out of that tree. But they don't pull out and go super far. A lot of times they'll go and pull out right in front of that tree. So they'll be sitting out 15 feet in front of that tree in the water depth that they want to be in. So if the tree is, you know, in a foot of water now, and 15 feet in front of that tree is 3 feet of water, and that's the water depth they feel comfortable in, if you throw to that tree and drag a bait back to the boat, you'll find that you get a lot of bites by fish out in front of that tree, which doesn't make sense to me because they're not holding on any cover. It's just like they're sitting out from the tree waiting to move in once the water comes back. And I find that all the time on the river fishing, like the Mississippi River, the Wisconsin River here. And like I said, I've seen it down south. I even had it happen at Lake Eufaula where there was a nice tree and I just dragged my bait out in front of it because it happens here so much. And I ended up catching, you know, a couple of fish. They weren't keepers, but they were fish that were holding out in front of that tree on nothing. There's nothing there. So just keep in mind that just because the water drops, it doesn't mean those fish are going to move super far away. It may mean that they're just going to move out in front and hold, waiting for the water to move back up so that they can get back into the cover that they want to be in. And again, I feel like we saw that at Lake Eufaula. There were several guys in the area that were fishing moving baits out in front of the cover where they were basically fishing like sand flats. And, you know, there were very isolated pieces of grass on those flats that were holding the fish that normally wouldn't hold the fish because it just wasn't good, thick cover. But because the fish weren't up in the bank cover, they felt like they had to come out. And the people who were going around fishing kind of in that 2 to 3 foot range, really in areas that didn't look all that enticing, they did well because that's where the fish were holding. It's not like those fish were going to move a quarter mile away to find 15 feet of water. They just wanted to be in a water depth that felt a little better and will go to the few pieces of cover in that range. So guys, don't let falling water scare you. Try to use it to your advantage. Try to just think of it as, you know what? The fish can't be there anymore. Where are they going to go to? They're not going to go far normally. So I hope this was helpful, guys. If you've got any other topics that you want me to address, please leave them in the comment section. It's really great to be able to answer some of your questions this way, and I hope it's helpful. So tune in. We got new videos that come out every day. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it, guys. We'll talk to you later.